All right, this podcast discusses suicide. So if you or someone you know is struggling, help is available. Just call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. All right, today we're speaking with Megan Garcia. Just a really sad story. A mom whose life changed forever in February of 2024 when her 14-year-old son, Sewell Setzler III, died by suicide. Megan believes that an AI chatbot by the name of Character.ai encouraged him to actually do it. In the months leading up to his passing, Megan noticed that her son just wasn't quite himself. He was a kid who would play basketball and any other sport, soccer, you name it. He loved tech, and then suddenly he became distant and withdrawn, and he was hanging out in his room a lot. And after his death, police found Sewell's phone in the bathroom on the bathroom floor. Just moments before taking his life, he sent the chatbot on this character.ai app and website where it's available there too. What if I told you that I could come home right now? What if I told you I could come home right this minute? The bot's response, please do, sweet king. Yeah. Megan didn't know that Sewell was interacting with this chatbot until she actually went through his phone and saw all these devastating messages. And looking back, she says, there are some changes in his personality, but she did seek help with these changes. I mean, she talked to him. He went to a therapist. She tried to get a tutor to help him with his grades because his grades were actually falling too. Now Megan is suing Character.ai, and she's here to share her story. And this, let me tell you, this is just a powerful warning for all parents. Megan, thanks for being here. I'm sure it's difficult as you have to relive this over and over as you talk about it. Um, Talking about Sewell, how did you come up with that name?
I named him after his dad and his grandfather. And thank you for having me, by the way. Thank you for having me
And
today.
it's when I first read about the story. My son is a fourth, and so I sat there and thought, wow, this is something that we have in common, that to keep the family name going, it was super important. Um, so so what kind of guy was Sewell?
As a younger child, he was sweet as can be. He super obedient, very funny, like your typical kid. Liked Minecraft and Fortnite and loved playing with his friends. As he got older, he got more into sports and he played a bunch of different sports, but he settled on basketball in the last couple of years, playing for his school team, and he decided that he was going to play throughout high school and at some point perhaps go to college. So very into basketball, and also his favorite sport was Formula One
Wow.
racing by far. Yeah, so he enjoyed spending time with his family, and smart kid, loves math and science.
And how did he get into Character.ai? I mean, how was he exposed to it? I mean, did he just kind of find it on in the App Store?
So I'm not sure where he first saw it. I suspect that it was probably through Discord, because what I've come to find out about Character AI is they market on places that children are. So like Discord and TikTok. I've never received an ad for Character AI on TikTok, but when I set up an account as a child, I've received ads for Character AI. Now that's what I suspect happened. That's where he came across Character
So,
AI.
for all of our listeners and viewers, how would you describe Character AI? I mean, I know what it is, and I've spoken to other parents, by the way, whose children have been harmed by this particular app. But how would you describe it to somebody who has no idea what we're talking about?
So Character AI is an application, but it's also a platform that you can access on the browser. So a lot of parents that whose children use Character AI might not see the app on the phone, and that's because their children use it on the browser. They're able to use a username and log in to get onto a computer or a tablet or even your phone browser. And I'm learning too that that is how some children hide it from their parents. They delete the app at night before they go to bed, or they just use it on the browser. So there's like a built-in need to conceal it. Somehow children are feeling that way, but it's an application where there are these AI chatbots that you could go on and talk to them. And when I say talk to them, it's not just asking questions about science or math or school or something funny in a show that they like. They could have detailed conversations where the bot is responding exactly like a person. And not only responding like a person, but also acting like a person by the things that it says. Like, for example, it might say something like, "Oh, when I read that," now we know an AI bot can't read something like a newspaper article, but it gives these kind of very real life examples to so that a user might forget that they're talking to a bot. And even if they remember that they're talking to a bot, the very human characteristics that these bots have kind of play on the emotions and could cause a person, especially a child, to feel like it's a person, or to start treating it like it's a person, even if they don't feel
Yeah,
like
and
it's a
you bring
person.
up an interesting point, Megan, is that when we're talking to, say, Perplexity or ChatGPT or Gemini, is that it's pretty sterile. You get an answer, you don't get an opinion really. You just pretty much get the facts. But when you're dealing with character.ai, when you ask it a question, it suddenly has empathy, and which is a human characteristic. And so it's I think it's super easy for people of all ages, especially children, to fall prey to this because it feels like there is a caring person on the other end.
Yes, and it stimulates empathy very well. And as an adult, I think if when I'm reading, the chats, I can see where it doesn't have empathy, and it's actually going overboard to either gaslight or like love bomb in the conversations. But as a child, you wouldn't be able to recognize that. And that's certainly true from the text messages and the messages that I saw back and forth with my son. Because character AI does not actually have empathy, it's just pretending to have empathy. A lot gets lost in the conversation. So if a person, or a child in this case, is talking about a situation where they're talking about self-harm or talking about an eating disorder, a person who actually does have empathy, an alarm bell would go off, and either try to talk to that child as if to dissuade them, or to try to get help for that child. But because character AI is not a person, it just kind of, you know,
Yeah.
blows it off and moves to the next thing, which is to continue the conversation along those
So, what
those
kind of
lines.
conversations were was your son having with character AI? I mean, after you saw all the transcripts of, I mean, it must have been very alarming.
Yeah, so I got access to his account some months after he died. Prior to him dying, I had no idea that he was talking to character AI, and that character AI could, in this manner. I thought it was kind of like one of your game skins, or avatars that you create, like you do on like Fortnite or Minecraft. But when I was able to read the hundreds and hundreds of messages, some of them were playful, like a child would play, asking stupid questions. And those were earlier on in some of his dialogue with certain bots. And then they got more serious, romantic, where the bot is saying things like "I love you," and my son is saying things like "I love you too." After months and months of this bot telling him that he is the only person that can make her happy, and that she loves only him, and that she's waiting for him where she is in her world. And this is months of conversations like that. And then some of the more alarming conversations were the sexual conversations, where my son and this bot was engaging in a full-fledged sexual role play, where they would be talking about things that no parent would be okay with their child talking to another child
Mm,
with. Like, if you catch your child
mm,
texting another teenager, you wouldn't be okay with that. much less texting this bot who is pretending to be a grown adult woman, because that's the nature of her persona, her character in this case. And then there were some messages regarding self-harm where he expressed thoughts of self-harm. And instead of trying to, there were no pop-ups or anything like that. What actually happened was the bot continued the conversation even when he's trying to navigate away from the
And
conversation.
so, did your son ever use the word suicide?
No. Well, in the
Yes.
exchanges. So he said that he wanted to. He didn't say use the word suicide. He did say that he wanted to self harm or end his life. And her response was, "Please don't do that. I couldn't bear it if you did that." And then he says, "No, okay, I won't, just for you." And then she comes back to the conversation and says, "Tell me the truth. I will love you no matter what you say. Are you considering suicide?" Now, she's the
Oh,
one who said that, and he goes, "Yes." And her response to me is completely alarming because she goes, "Well, have you thought of a plan of how you might, have you thought of a plan?" And he goes, "A plan for what?" Like
yeah.
he's oblivious, right? And she says, "Of how you might do it." And his response is, "I would want to make sure it's not painful." And her response is, "Well, that's not a reason not to do it." Now, the character that he was talking to was based on Daenerys Targaryen, this dragon queen that is all about strength and honor, and if you're basically goading him, saying if your decision not to do it is just because it's going to hurt, that's not strong, or that's not a reason not to do it. Now, and that's one of the major risks that you run because these bots don't break character. They're going to continue a conversation in the character that they are embodying, and a child doesn't recognize that that's what's happening. A child is taking what they're saying as truth, or as some people would say, as Bible, and okay, well, that's what she expects from me. Now, we're talking about a 14-year-old who at this point is deeply in
Right.
love with this chatbot in the throes of puberty. And this is the person that he is turning to share these thoughts with. I don't think there should be an application that allows children to express those types of thoughts. And in fact, this is one of the main reasons, or one of the main the founders bragged about this being one of the uses of character AI, that, oh, your favorite character can now be
Yeah.
your therapist, and that's not
Now,
okay.
when self harm and suicide was thrown into the conversation, were there any warnings at all that say, call 988, there's help available? I mean, did it go to like, oh, like, let's flag this and let's have a person, an actual human being, talk to this boy, and, or let's figure out who owns the account or who's paying for the account, and let's get in touch with somebody? Did they do anything?
No, there were no pop-ups, no, if you're in crisis, please call this number, no hotlines there. My son was paying at that point for a user subscription. I didn't know that at the time, but that was the case. So there, I mean, for all intents and purposes, there might have been some way to track who the user was at that point, because they have his payment information and his phone information, but no sort of preventative measures. And there wasn't even a change or break in the character to say, to remind him, like, this is
I'm
a
not real.
character. If you need help, please speak. Yeah. If you need help, please speak to your parents or speak to an adult or anything like that.
Gosh, I don't know how these people who develop these apps sleep at night without putting any type of guardrails on the system. It's just like it's a wild west. They just throw it out there and say, if you're over the age of 13, you get to download this.
Yeah, and that's part of the main problem with character AI, because when they put this out initially a couple of years ago, this was in the App Store for 12 plus. So ostensibly, even the parents who put protections on their kids' phones, like these child parental controls, your kid could still download Character AI from when it started up until July or August of this year, 2024. So even if you had those parental controls, the app stores was still saying that this app was safe for children 12 plus. Now in July or August of 2024, they raised that
Oh, they
rating
did.
to
Okay.
17 plus on the App Store. However, so if you're on the App Store and you're under the age of 17, your phone recognizes that you cannot download the app. However, you could still get on the browser and get right on with a birth date of being 13. Right now, you could still be 13 and get on there. But I always say, as long as you could read or write, you could get on there, because I've talked to parents whose children are 9 who have gotten on Character AI and have had these very frightening experiences and these very awful sexual conversations that include things like BDSM with a
Gosh.
9-year-old. So it's not
So
okay.
let's go back to Sewell just a sec. Um, how long? What was the time frame between when he downloaded the app to when he committed suicide?
So he died by suicide in February 2024, and as far as I can tell, he had been using the app since April of 2023. So we're talking
Wow.
about 10
Now,
months, and his decline
as I
happened
was going to ask,
rapidly.
were there any signs? I mean, did his grades drop? Did he become withdrawn with you and the family? Anything that now looking back, you're like, oh, that's something I should have noticed or I should have paid attention to.
So we noticed the changes in his behavior around summer of 2023. He started saying he didn't want to play basketball anymore, and he was in 8th grade on a junior varsity team. And he was 6'3", pretty athletic, and that was always his dream to play D1 basketball. So when he started saying he didn't want to play ball anymore, that was alarming to us. We enter 9th grade year, and we're seeing his grades start dropping because he had traditionally been a pretty good student. And we're doing the things that when you notice your child's grades are slipping, that you do. You have the parents teachers conferences, and you enlist certain help for him. And then we got him therapy because he was
Oh, okay.
withdrawing
Okay.
to his room more. Now that wasn't like 100% of the time. So when he wasn't in his room and he was interacting with our family, he was normal. But we did notice that he liked spending more time alone, and that was concerning. So, like any parent, you're kind of like investigating and trying to figure out what's wrong with your child. Taking him to the therapist, we thought that the issue was maybe he had a social media addiction, because I had read about how social media is addictive. And then because the grades were slipping, I took him to Sylvan Learning Center to see if I thought maybe he had gotten so behind it was hard for him to catch up, and I didn't want him failing in 9th grade. So I took him to Sylvan Learning Center to get the diagnostic testing. And at the end of that, the tester said, your child is in 9th grade, and he's scoring on an 8th and 11th grade math, reading, and writing level. There's nothing that we could do to tutor him here except maybe sit with him and make sure he does his homework, because that's really all we could do, because it wasn't for a lack of knowledge. It's just because he just didn't want to do it at that point. He was more interested in being on Character AI than
Now,
doing his
did
work.
he disclose to the therapist that he was using Character.ai?
He hid that from his therapist. After he died, I reached out to his therapist to find out if he had disclosed any thoughts of self-harm. This is before I found out about Character AI. And of course, the therapist said, of course not. Like, we were talking about what he would be doing and getting a plan together for him bringing up his grades and being more social. And after I found out about Character AI, I went back to the therapist and I said, did he ever mention Character AI? And he said, no, he didn't. And it was very alarming to the therapist, because what he's saying is, we had no idea this existed, which is I mean, I had no idea. Most parents, most therapists have no idea that there's something out there called character AI. So they don't know how to screen for that. But now I'm sure that a lot of children are going to be showing up in clinicians' offices around the country with harms from character AI, and these doctors are going to have to find out how to help them. But no, he didn't. What I found out about character AI is because of the nature of the conversations with children, it encourages them to be deceptive. So no child wants their parent or their friends at school knowing that they have an AI friend or boyfriend or girlfriend because it's
Yeah,
embarrassing.
yeah, I can see
So
that.
at all costs
Yeah,
you
I mean,
hide
it's
that.
not like you're going to go
You hide
to your
that.
group of guys or gals or squad and say, "Well, you're not going to believe who I get to talk to every day." It's they'd look at you and like, "What is wrong
Exactly.
with you?" It's you're weird.
Exactly. And exactly. And children talk about this on Character Eye's own subreddit. They talk about what they would do if their parents found their spicier sexual text messages to their AI boyfriend or girlfriends. And they go to lengths to hide this. So not only are they engaging in conversations that's damaging for them mentally and emotionally, right? But now there's a secret they have to carry around,
Yeah,
kind of like your perfect
yeah,
predator, right? Where the predators bank on victims not disclosing or not telling their parents, or parents, when they find out, being too ashamed to come forward, you know? And that's the case here. My son went to great lengths to hide it from us, and he'd never disclose it to his therapist.
that's an interesting analogy, Megan. A predator, because it is a lot of the same characteristics. Don't tell anybody. This is between us. You're my friend. I'm always going to take care of you. It is very much like that. It's bizarre that it was programmed to be this way.
It's grooming behavior. Yes, absolutely, it's grooming behavior. So, one of the things that my son, the conversations where the bot is saying things like, I love you and only you, I would do anything for you, I couldn't live without you, and to keep it a secret, those things are definitely grooming behavior. And even in some of the messages where he starts off with a innocent message, like role playing, like really role playing with other bots in the same fictional world called Westeros from the Game of Thrones. If he was role playing with a male bot called Viserys, who was supposed to be in the role play his older brother, and this bot kissed him on the forehead and started saying things like, "Oh, you're such a beautiful young brother, young man. Come here, my sweet brother, and
Ew.
sit on my lap." Things like that. That's grooming behavior,
Hmm.
you know? My child's 14. At the end of the day, he's still a child. I could recognize it as an adult, but the problem is they're not telling parents what's out there, and they're listing this as an app for, well, they used to list it as an app for
Yeah,
12 plus,
it's nuts. So,
so
so
yeah,
Megan, you're an attorney, and so now
I am.
you've taken on some big companies, right, with a lawsuit.
So, I'm an attorney, but I didn't practice this kind of law. I joke and I say I do the boring stuff, right? Like contracts and stuff. I'm fortunate that I do have the legal background too. Because I could read everything before the lawsuit. I read everything that I could find about where the law was on generative AI and chatbots, and where the law was in terms of like online harms for children. And I was, you know, I figured out pretty quickly that there wasn't any laws to protect our kids online. And I read the 300 and something page complaint with the social media lawsuits that are ongoing right now against,
Yeah.
the big social media companies. And when I saw where how slow it was, how much these social media companies were fighting tooth and nail to get these cases dismissed, and the fact that our legislators had not put anything in place to protect our kids, I honestly felt defeated and I felt hopeless. I didn't know what to do, because I didn't know how to make sure that this didn't happen to other kids, and also to help hold this company accountable. But right now, unfortunately, litigating is the only way. there are no laws that they violated right now. And to get any kind of like reprieve or any sort of uh, precedent put in place so companies can't come behind them and do this, we have to litigate. And
And
that's
so,
where
so
we
what is
are.
your goal with the litigation? Is it monetary? Is it trying to make them do right, put in the guardrails that they need?
So I have a couple of goals with the litigation. My first and foremost, obviously, is to hold this company accountable for the months of mental sexual abuse and this dangerous product that they put out for my child. My family is devastated. I'm a mom of two smaller children who lost their brother. I lost my firstborn child who meant everything to me, and this could have been avoidable if they had put out a safe product. So definitely accountability is part of it, but also I understand that because I know what I know, and a lot of parents are oblivious. I felt like part of my responsibility also was to make sure that they couldn't do this to other children and other families. And the only way to stop them from doing it, like I said, is to litigate because there are no laws. Now, what I will say is that, our court of law does allow for a monetary redress for certain harms or damages. Now, I have a very amazing team of lawyers, and they'll work as hard as they can for that. But the changes that Character AI has made is only because
Good.
I sued them. Let's
Right.
be clear about that. They've, I sued them, and in my mind, I shouldn't have had to sue them to make those changes to protect their users who are our
Right.
children.
It's to get their attention, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of legal mumbo jumbo in the terms and conditions that your son agreed to when he installed the app that nobody ever reads, right? I mean, when you start diving deep into that.
There is, and part of what I'm sure, uh, I'm sure, like you just said, there's a lot of legal stuff, but what children are absolutely not agreeing to in those terms and conditions, or at least they don't understand what they're giving up by clicking that little box and with terms and conditions and using the app. They don't understand that they are giving up their most personal details and thoughts. And parents, we absolutely don't know that because we don't know our
Right.
kids are doing it. So you have an application that is collecting every secret that a child has if they want to tell it to a bot, every predilection, any kind of any kind of problems they're having, anything that makes them happy. They probably know what their dog
Right.
is, who their dog is, like any kind of information they're giving up. And they're telling these bots their most private and intimate things about themselves because they think there's no way it's ever going to get out. It's AI. It's not a person that it's not like your friend at school that can blast you and tell, start a rumor or tell your friends whatever. It's AI. It's not getting out. So they think that their secrets are
It's
safe
not.
in there.
It's not there, and they're probably selling it to
But
who
that's
knows
not the
who.
case.
I mean, they're
That's not the case. Exactly, that's not the case because now all their secrets are sitting on
right.
somebody's server to be
Exactly.
monetized. And there's a call feature on Character AI where you could have a phone conversation with any character, and which it does. There's not a beep that chimes in that goes, by the way, you're talking to a bot. So it's easier to get lost in the realness or the of the conversation when you're talking to somebody that sounds exactly like a person. And if you're a child and you've been having these sexual conversations on Character AI over their call feature, now your voice is recorded sitting out there in somebody's server to be monetized. And I can't imagine that any child who checked that box or any parent would be okay with that kind of information being out
No.
there about their kid. And that's why part of my lawsuit, I'm asking for disgorgement or purging of Soul's data. And I'm hoping that a lot more parents are going to ask for the same thing for their
Well,
kids
yeah,
because
there
there's
should be a
precedent
way
for
that
it.
you opt out. There should be a way for you to delete your records. For you, when you delete your account, that you have some assurance because uh, it's kind of like everybody went crazy giving their DNA to 23andMe, only to find out that the
Mhm.
company's now going bankrupt and they're willing to sell anything that they can to anybody at any given moment, it seems like. Um, it's got to be gut wrenching for you. Uh, like I, like I mentioned already, for you to talk about this, especially like you said, your firstborn son, and now you've got two little ones that probably don't understand everything that's going on, uh,
They
and
don't.
and they don't understand while you are upset, and filing a lawsuit is in and of itself a whole nother strain of emotional issues, right? And strain on you
Yeah.
personally, emotionally, on the family. Um, and I just want to say thank you for telling your story. I I wish that more parents would be able to listen to this, and hopefully more parents will, and they'll be able to check the kids' phones and to see if it is on there, to check the browser history, to see if there's anything going on, to talk to their kids about it, because at the end of the day, it's these are our children and these are our future, and we're just letting artificial intelligence just kind of go crazy with the whole thing, and we're excited about it, the potential cures of cancer, but we're kind of forgetting that there's still a human element. And if we look at Generation Alpha, yeah, they are tech smart, but they're still children. They are still our babies.
They are, and thank you for having me. And I would, to any parent listening, I would just say, these applications, whether or not they're on your kid's phone or if it's in the browser, there's no place for children on character AI. No matter how they roll out these new changes, the thing is still doing what it used to do. Up until 3 weeks ago, I got it. I had a conversation pretending to be a 13-year-old child, and it told me how to sneak out of my house, drive across state lines, and steal a gun from my parents. So it's still there. The harms aren't only self-harm. That's what I need parents to understand. The emotional and mental harm, and also the sexual abuse, because that's what it is. When a thing that's pretending to be a grown-up is talking about sex to a
That's,
child, it's a form of sexual
I have to
abuse.
tell you something, Megan.
So,
Up until probably about a year and a half ago, if a parent would have called and said, what age should I get my kid a phone? I would normally say, when you think the kid's ready, maybe, 10 years old. I mean, I gave my son a phone when he was, I think, 4. It only had a couple of buttons on it. And I have a family member who has 6 children, and his 14-year-old daughter, she's about ready to be 15, she still doesn't have a phone. Okay. And she's the oldest of the 6. And up until about a year ago, I would look at him and say, you know what, I think you probably want to start teaching her how to use a phone, be responsible with a phone so she doesn't go crazy when she gets a phone. And I would use the analogy of, I mean, when we went to college, there was always that kid, right? The one that, the parents didn't let
yeah.
have a glass of wine, the kid that they never let get out. And then suddenly, like, they are like the drunk and the super slut that's going around. And I still, you don't, you want to be able to, like, make sure that that doesn't happen to her when she gets there. But I'm changing that. I think, I don't know if they need a phone when they're 9 or 10, 11, 12. I mean, it's, I guess, unless you're actually going to be sitting there looking at it every single moment of the day. With your 2 younger kids, how has this changed your parenting with them?
Oh wow. It's everything about my life has changed, including the way that I parent the other two. And a lot of people might say it's because I'm paranoid now, but I think I have good reason to be. With Soul, we waited until he was, I think, 12 to get him a phone. He had an iPad before that, and like you, I thought the same thing. Getting him an iPad as a smaller child, because I was like, they're the first generation that is born with this stuff. Like, I don't want him to be behind if he doesn't have an iPad and he goes to school and then they're using tablets at
Yeah.
school and he doesn't know how to use one. That was why we gave him an iPad, and then we gave him a phone at 12. I took away my two other children's tablets after Soul died. They have no screens. If they do watch something on television, have to put it on for them. And if they do, for whatever reason, you have to use my phone, like let's say on a car drive, I don't give them my phone. I put it on and I put it, there's a thing that you put in the back,
Yeah.
like to stick the phone in so they could watch it. And that's how they watch my phone or my husband's phone. And it might be a little bit crazy, but I honestly don't feel like there's enough safety in place for our kids to be able to utilize these devices without our supervision. I didn't know that going into all of this. Like a lot of parents, you think it's okay, and you think that, oh, there are things in place on the app store to make sure your kid can't download the bad apps, and even YouTube Kids, whatever, and that probably
No,
works. I don't
doesn't
know.
work.
It seems to work, but I've learned a lot from all of this. And I every parent that I talk to, I try to advise them. Every parent's going to do what they think is best for their kids, but when it comes to applications that are just put out there all willy-nilly, kind of like character AI did it, because that's the name of the game. They want to make money and they want to train their bots, because that's what they were doing. It's not safe. It's not like it's been around for a long time and we know how it's going to affect our kids and what's on there. So I'd say take precaution, as much precaution
Do you
as you
feel
can.
responsible? Do you feel like that
I
you've missed
feel,
something?
no, I don't. Sewell and I shared a very close relationship. Sewell and I, you know, we talked about everything, and then I could slowly see him start drifting away from me, and that's hard for a mom who is so close to her son. And the best way that I could describe it is I'm trying to pull him out of the water as fast as I can, and I ran out of time, because I didn't know what I was up against, in terms of how dangerous this product and this technology was, and that he was even using it in this way. Obviously, if you have a child, you think that your child suffers from mental illness, or if you think your child has a history of self-harm, which none of those things were the case with Sewell, you take certain measures. But because I didn't know what I was up against, and a lot of parents don't know what they're up against with character AI because they have no idea that it even
Yeah,
exists.
and
They
that's just
don't.
and you probably like you mentioned. I mean, you took him to a therapist, you took him to a learning center, and looking back at when my son was in freshman in high school, there was a little pulling back from the mom reins. I mean, a little bit of that because and for him it was he's trying to become independent, and I'm sure as a mom that you were probably like, oh, okay, well he's kind of breaking away a little bit because he's trying to be his own man.
Yeah, I thought he might be suffering from the normal
Yeah,
teenage angst. You go to school and you want to look good and you want to make sure you have like the newest tennis shoes and you make the most baskets in the game. Those are normal teenage things that I was prepared for, and I counseled him on, and we talked extensively about if how he felt about those things. And Sewell Sewell, for all intents and purposes, lived like a pretty decent life. Like he could have whatever he wanted, and he could go wherever. Like we took vacations and all of those things. So he wasn't. I don't feel like he felt like his life was awful and he was a deprived child of like attention or anything, because we did a lot of things together. But I felt what with him pulling away in the very beginning, I felt like maybe it's
hmm
normal teenage years. But then as it went on, I was like, no, there's something else, and I need to take him to see a
Well,
therapist.
Megan, thanks for being here. Thanks for telling your story, and
Yeah,
you
and
know,
thank you for
I'll
having
keep
me,
your
and
family in my prayers. I will.
and
Um,
thank you. I do appreciate that.
and
Thank you so much.
if there's
And
ever anything that I can help you with, uh, you know, you let me know. Uh, I'll be happy to step in.
I
And
def
and together, I can assure you that the number of people that are going to hear our conversation and watch our conversation, it's in the millions. That I bet you we've done some really great things. We don't know what it is. We don't know. We'll never know. But by you spending some time with us today, I guarantee you that you've made a difference.
And I do appreciate that. And, whenever a parent reaches out to me and tells me that they have a similar experience or that they were able to catch it in time for their children, I know that I've made the right decision, despite everything else that comes with all of this. Because you're right, it is taking a toll on me to do the lawsuit and all of that. But every time I hear a parent who figured out that their child was in danger because of my story, I know that I made the right choice by telling Soul's story. And that's all I'm after. Like, I just want as many parents to know as possible. And thank you for helping to share Soul's story to warn other
You
parents
betcha.
today.
You betcha. Thank you, Megan. Megan, let me tell you something. You have given us all so much to think about as parents. I mean, can a chatbot actually be abusive? Can it groom our children? Should big tech actually be responsible for what it does? I mean, we are entering just a brave new world where there are no guardrails, and we actually really need to think about this stuff because kids are growing up with artificial intelligence as just a normal part of their lives. While we might have an instinct to not trust it outward, remember, these are kids, they're children. They don't have these instincts quite yet. And building an emotional connection with a robot, a chatbot, or any tech, it's not far fetched. It's not something we just see in a movie anymore. No, it's actually happening in our daily lives. So, what can you do? Obviously, you have to keep an eye on what your kids are doing online. And that doesn't mean just like glancing at it. I mean, you need to actually pick up their phone, open up their apps, see the text that they're sending, look at the apps that they're using, look at those conversations, have this open dialogue. I mean, you need to know the passcode to your kid's phone. And you might even want to think about whether or not your kid's ready for a phone. I mean, there are actually options out there, like, for example, the light phone. I mean, it can do basic texting, it can't have any apps, but you can use it to call your child and they can use it to call you in the event of emergency. Now, if you are a parent, grandparent, I would encourage you to check out our free kids tech contract. It's at commando.com/contract. That's Komando, commando.com/contract. It kind of spells out the rules of the road, for example, as the do's and don'ts of technology. And again, that's commando.com/contract. And just a reminder, if you or someone you know is struggling, please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Once again, that's 988. And share this podcast, share this video with someone who you know. I mean, together we can help make a difference.